Hello, hope this video finds you well. This is our third video in a set of videos where we're building a basic program to do a base 2 to base 10 conversion. In the last video, we actually developed our process function, which is invoked when we press return. So here's my simple tool, and when I press return, you'll see that, kind of does something. It doesn't do all the work yet, but what it does is essentially if I write, put that in, you'll see down here it's calling the process function and then just printing out that value. We mapped out, broadly what we have to do here, and we kind of put in code where we could fit that in. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to write a function to check to ensure it is a valid string. Because if you think about this, if we're going to do a conversion, we can only do it if the number in the entry is a binary value, that is, contains only zeros and ones. So we could convert 101, but we couldn't convert cat or 93. So how do we do that? Well, the way we're going to do that is we're simply going to count the number of ones in the string, we're going to count the number of zeros in the string, and then we're going to check if the total number of characters is equal to the number of ones and the number of zeros. So let's dive in. So I've taken conversion tool 2 and I've pasted it in here and changed that to 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here below process and I'm going to make a new function, and this new function is going to be called check 01, and it's going to take a string parameter. So I'm going to say print, we're just going to print check 01. I always like to do this so I know I'm in there. And let's look at the flowchart. So what happens? The function is going to get called, and we're going to call it, when we process our value, and it's going to take a string parameter that we call str. We're going to count the number of zeros in str. We can do it with that line of code there. I'll explain in a minute. We're going to count the number of ones in str, and we're going to check to see if the number of zeros plus the number of ones is the same as the length of the string. And if that's true, we're going to return true, meaning, yes, this string just contains ones and zeros. Otherwise, we're going to return false. Okay, so let's do that. Now, you can see this here. So the first thing I said we're going to do is we're going to count the number of zeros. And how do we do that? Well, we simply do this. We say num0 equals str, and we're going to use the count function. It's a nice instance function, a string instance function, and essentially what you do is you pass it a parameter, and it counts the number of times that parameter appears in the implied object, which is a string. So we're going to count the number of zeros in str. And we're going to say num1 equals str.count, and we're going to count the number of ones. And now we're going to write that if statement, because if we come back to our flowchart, we see that if the number of zeros plus the number of ones is the same as the length, we return true, otherwise we return false. So I'm going to say if num0 plus num1, so we're going to add the number of zeros and add the number of ones. If that's the same as the length of str, we're going to return true, and then otherwise we're going to return false. So if I save this now, we're going to come up here and just let's see where this gets invoked in process. So we have this function called process, which is invoked when we press enter, and we want right here to check to ensure a string of ones and zeros. So I'm going to make a new variable called check, and it's going to invoke check01, and we're going to pass it val. So essentially what I'm doing is I am passing val into this function check01. So it's going to come down here, run through that, and return true or false. So let's just print check, and let's see what happens here. So we save this. Let's clear this. Tool 3. And so if I put in something that is just ones and zeros, so 101, and I press enter, I should see a true on the console. There it is. If I put a whole bunch of ones, true. Here's a whole bunch of zeros, true. If I put 99, false. If I put cat, false. And that's it. So now we can very quickly check to see if that is a binary value that has been entered. And again, we simply did that by counting the number of zeros, counting the number of ones, and seeing if they, when we add the number of ones and the number of zeros together, we get the length of the string. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an if statement here. Let's do that now. So I'm going to say if check is equivalent to true, well, then I'm going to, let's just print process string. I'm getting a bunch of print things set up here, so maybe we'll clean this up. Else, we're going to print. Actually, let's do this. Let's update the display. I want a little off script here. So I can't remove the leftmost zero because that's what we'll do in our next one. We're not going to do the conversion yet, but we can update the display. So what am I going to do? How do I do that? So I do that by taking my widget, which is, oops, pardon me. There we go. Sorry about that. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to say lab results dot, and I'm going to configure this, and I'm going to just reset the text to valid input. I haven't done anything with it yet, and I'm going to take here, and I'm going to say lab results dot config, and I'm going to set the text to invalid. So what do? We check to see if the string is just zeros and ones, and then we return true if that's the case and false otherwise. I'm not going to print that out. Let's get rid of that print. Let's get rid of that print. And then if check is true, meaning it's only zeros and one, we're going to update the display, the results, with valid input. Otherwise, we're going to say invalid. And then I'm going to delete that. So let's save this. Oh, let's get rid of that print. Let's save this. We have to close down what we had running before. There we go. So if I say 101, valid input. Whole bunch of ones, valid input. 64, I get an error. So let's see what happened here. So it's really important to read our errors here. And you can see it says it is not defined. And you might have seen when I was doing this that I spelt that wrong. So let's save that. Let's get rid of that. Let's try this again. If I put in invalid input like 45, invalid. Beautiful. So now we're at a stage where we have taken this process and we've taken that broad stroke comments and we're kind of narrowing it down. So in our next video, flowchart, is we are going to focus on removing the leading zeros. And the reason I'm going to do that is because, we just run this one more time, in theory, if I put in 1 or 0,000,001, that should give me the same value. Those zeros to the left are invalid. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Have a wonderful day.